Hello, hunters, and welcome back to the Salawag's Wife's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. And I have recently had the pleasure of rewatching the Hobbit Trilogy, directed by Peter Jackson, starring that guy from Captain America, Black Panther, whatever the heck it is. Yeah. Wow, that's terrible. Bilbo Baggins is my precious is. I don't even know his name. Isn't that terrible? I actually think that's just awful. Shall I redo this review and learn his name? Maybe. I don't know Doran, Orin, Borin, or Gorin. Fuck it. Hello, hunters, and welcome back to the Salawag's Wife's Great. Hello, hunters, and welcome back to the Salawag's Wife's Great Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. As per the name, I did not do enough research for this, and I don't know anybody's name, but I did really love watching the Hobbit Trilogy. I know that's not a popular opinion, but you know what? The popular opinion was that Citizen Kane wasn't a great movie when it first came out. So screw the popular opinion. Sometimes you guys just listen to what other people say and repeat their words and act like that's your opinion. So Peter Jackson's I do recall the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Missed all of these movies in theaters, but I really regret missing the Hobbit trilogy in theaters because I think it's much more for me. The Lord of the Rings trilogy was fantastic. I did see it when it came out on DVD during the Blockbuster days. But The Hobbit, I actually really found really easy to watch. It was very, especially when we're talking about this trilogy as a whole, I think The Hobbit, they really got things down. Peter Jackson had already made the Lord of the Rings trilogy and King Kong. And obviously there was, unfortunately, all the drama surrounding Del Toro, who is one of my favorite filmmakers of all time. Certainly my go-to when it comes to who do I look for in terms of how I make a story. But Peter Jackson, I thought, similar to like Breaking Bad to Better Call Saul, where Vince Gilligan clearly learned from all his trials and tribulations in making Breaking Bad, I thought I had the pleasure of watching Better Call Saul first with a friend, and I found that Better Call Saul was just so easy to watch. It was just like the entertainment meeting the character had such a great flow to it. And I do recommend watching if you want to watch Breaking Bad, but if something's off, you can't quite get into it. Watch the first 4 seasons of Better Call Saul and then do Breaking Bad, and then watch the last 2 seasons of Better Call Saul. And you're going to have a really fluid experience where you feel like all the characters are lived in. But like I said, in that vein, I really felt like The Hobbit was Peter Jackson having done this so many times. I feel in many ways like when it comes to King Kong versus Lord of the Rings, much easier to get into King Kong. And I think also the simplicity of the story really benefits the experience of the movie. And especially the relationships. When it comes down to King Kong as a character with Naomi Watts, that stuff to me from the first time I saw it, and I did see that one in theaters, from the first time I saw it, I thought the control of the relationship was so much stronger. I mean, I think the relationships in Lord of the Rings were strong and solid and very well told. But when it comes to how they're built up, I thought the emotional way that King Kong built up between Naomi Watts and Kong, I thought was just so well done. And I had watched that recently before rewatching The Hobbit again, and I was just blown away. I'm like, this is actually quite a fantastic movie. I know it got panned a lot, and there's a lot of baggage, but it's actually a pretty fantastic movie, especially when you just hone in on the most important relationship in the movie being King Kong and Naomi Watts. And with all that being said, I felt like when we come into The Hobbit, we do, and this is a spoiler review, so if you haven't seen the Hobbit trilogy and you just want to know, hey, this guy seems to like movies that I like. Should I watch The Hobbit? Yeah, totally. And I would say it's more fun and easy to watch than Lord of the Rings. And absolutely, I think you could watch this in that kind of order, which is the original intended order. I really felt like watching The Hobbit. I love how similar to the animated movie, which I also watched. After watching the Hobbit Trilogy, I watched the animated movie. And similar to the animated movie, the story just starts. Although in The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, we do get this whole sort of prelude, very similar to Lord of the Rings, that establishes the fear of Smaug, the great and powerful dragon that terrorized this part of Middle Earth. We get an establishment of the dragon taking over the kingdom of the dwarves and taking their treasure. And not only that, but the battle of the armies, the orc and goblin and elven armies and the dwarvish armies trying to reclaim that kingdom, and how all of that went down so tragically. But for me, the movie only slows down when it reestablishes the Lord of the Rings characters quite up front, and we see Ian Holm again, which is always good to see Ian Holm with, I was going to say Shia LaBeouf. Dang it. That's terrible. Wrong kid actor. Ian Holm with Elijah Wood. And Ian Holm is essentially sitting down to recount the experiences of An Unexpected Journey. And I really love that once we kind of get past all that prelude, prologue stuff, once The Hobbit starts, it just starts. And I love that it's just Bilbo sitting down, and fantastic actor. I knew his name before this review, but I forgot it upon hitting the record button. But he's the actor who was in the Black Panther movies, and he's been in Edgar Wright's movies. Fantastic actor who plays Bilbo Baggins. I am so sorry for forgetting your name. I suck. But this is the role he was meant for, because his Bilbo is so perfect and so like exact to the cartoon. What really struck me was the continuity between the movie and the cartoon was spot on. You can see where it expands, and that must be, either taking things from the book or reading into the book or whatever it may be. Now I want to read the book because of watching these both back to back. But I love that Bilbo's just sitting there, and Gandalf just shows up at his doorstep and says, would you like a job? Would you like to join an adventure? And then all of a sudden these dwarves show up and basically trash his house and eat his food. And he's worried that they're going to start breaking his stuff. And the dwarves just start passing around his plates to each other, and they sing this joyous song. Break the plates and smash everything because that's what Bilbo hates. I just thought hilarious and fun and adorable. I thought this is a filmmaking I haven't seen in a while, because George Lucas himself has said it. The audience hates when there's a cartoon character or an adorable character in the movie, like the Ewoks. But it's like, this is fantasy. This is for children. It's not for adults. Not really. Or it's for that childish part of you. I love that we have these guys singing and having a blast, and that's what Bilbo Baggins hates, and really establishing Bilbo as this kind of very self-contained, kind of prudish character. And I just love the dwarves being established as being very fun-loving, very skilled. Like despite what a mess they appear to be, they're very quick and good with their hands, and they clean all the dishes that they use after eating all of Bilbo's food. But they clean it all. It's all perfectly good and fine. And it just establishes that level of skill that they have. I mean, right off the bat, their characters established very clearly as very deeply skilled. And I think what's beautiful about the animated movie is that it actually establishes their skill by showing you how they had a system inside the kingdom of making everything work. And the Hobbit trilogy does this in reverse, where it just kind of establishes the dwarves as being kind of miscreants, that, or at least seeming miscreants. But by the desolation of Smog, when you see them encounter the dragon, and you see how well they handle their kingdom and all their instruments for mining and molding gold, and you see how well they run their machines, even after who knows how long it's been since they've been to their kingdom. The establishment of character is so clear, and the establishment of relationships. Because Bilbo is very against everyone being in his home. He's very against this adventure, and he seems like quite a deliberate coward. Not just a coward, but he deliberately wishes to remain a coward and remain in his home and remain comfortable and all that stuff. Which is nothing necessarily wrong with that. These people are barging in your home, and you have a right to live your life. But that's his character. And so between him and Doran, and I didn't get that actor's name either, the actor who plays Doran, the Doran Oakenshield, the whose namesake, once he returns and gets the magic diamond jewel, he will essentially be the king again. That's what they're all trying to do. We establish, not only is Bilbo kind of seen as like this coward to these dwarves, but specifically to Doran, who is the leader of the dwarves. And what I love is Gandalf essentially lays out this history that, I don't know if this is true of the books at all, but it's nice for the movie. He lays out this history before Bilbo, saying, you have ancestral history. Yeah, you are the descendant of great warriors. You yourself, I remember being a child, wanting to go out and have adventures, and now look at you. What's become of you? And he's personally goading him. But at the same time, I like that there is something innate within this character that means that he should be able to achieve everything. But what I kind of like about the animated movie more is that it's a bit more universal. It really says that anybody could be this great hero that goes on this adventure. But that's fine. Because what I love about Unexpected Journey is that it really is, it's an unexpected journey. When Bilbo wakes up and finds the dwarves gone, he does feel the calling within him to go on this adventure. And so he chases after them. There's that parallel between Lord of the Rings where you have Frodo and Sam running, but in this case it's running toward adventure. I'm going to go on an adventure. And I was like, okay, that's fun. I really love the complete tonal shift of this movie, of just really being about, at least at first, having a good time, having an adventure. It truly is the spirit of adventure, what like the 90s movies used to do, like with Mask of Zorro. Mask of Zorro is one of my favorite movies, but that's true action adventure, where action is more about more fighting, chases. Adventure is getting caught up in situations where, like on the raft or on the river, you might fall to your death, but you don't. That's the whole point of an adventure. It's that you're surviving things that should be dangerous and deadly to anybody else. And I really love that the whole course of Unexpected Journey. Like I said, this is a spoiler-full review, so if you haven't seen the movie, I just recommend watching it. But what I love about just the first part, Unexpected Journey, is that when we get to the finale, and Bilbo, before even getting to the finale, we have multiple action sequences that Bilbo is kind of running from, but he has these little moments of standing up and looking out for everyone. When they're caught by the trolls, which I do recall being both in the book, I did read some excerpts as a kid. When they're caught by the trolls and everyone's tied up, Bilbo has a moment of getting free, and he tries to reason with the trolls not to eat all the dwarves. And he says, oh, they're sick. They've got bugs and worms. And trolls go, bugs and worms? Oh, no. But even though it's not really working and the trolls kind of realize they're being rused, it does just give them just enough time for Gandalf. That's the one thing, I think that makes The Hobbit both magical and kind of like less powerful of an adventure for the heroes is that Gandalf basically just comes in and saves the day in the Hobbit animated show. But at least here, Bilbo being the main character, and the first movie is really about him learning about Doran and becoming a friend to the dwarves, and specifically Doran. But the one thing is we get this Deus ex machina. Man, I screwed that up. But basically, that means the god comes down from the machine. And it's not that you can't still have a good movie or a good story with that kind of element, but it does take a bit away from the strength of the hero and their ability to succeed at the end. So I like that at least Bilbo got a little moment of just distracting the trolls, but it's his first moment of looking out for the troop, which is what he's supposed to do. So, and also it establishes his gift of gab, which will be what gets him out of the Gollum situation later. So again, they escape the trolls, but then they fall into a cave full of goblins, where the goblins want to kill and eat everybody. And Bilbo, who kind of escapes and he's afraid and he doesn't want to fight, ends up falling down another cave where he runs into Gollum. It's very similar to the way it happens into the animated movie, but not exactly the same. But it's when he's down there with Gollum. Now, this I do remember as a kid, both reading and seeing the sequence in class as part of learning literature and learning language. And the Gollum sequence is one of my favorites. It's always been a favorite sequence of mine. It was something I was confused about when I watched Lord of the Rings. I'm like, where's the Gollum scene? I mean, Gollum's here, but where's that scene that I know? But I'm like, oh, that was The Hobbit. So I love the scene of The Hobbit because this is like the Riddler. This is why I hate the Batman, because these riddles are actually challenging and it takes time to figure out. But I love that Gollum has these really good riddles for Frodo that take a minute. You really have to think about what the riddle is. And basically, like I said, the gift of gab being established, the quick wit being established. Also, riddles. Riddles is something that's part of language. It's part of the strength of Bilbo's character because he loves to read. So language is one of his powerful tools. The dwarves are great at fighting. They're great at all this. But what Bilbo brings is his mind. He has a great mind for paying attention to things and noticing things and speaking language. And his ability to beat Gollum at the riddles, even though it ends up being a bit of a cheat. What is in my pocket? You know what I mean? But that, the power of that is also like this moment is what starts Lord of the Rings, inadvertently. So it's such a great, powerful scene, and I loved the return of Andy Serkis, and the animation looks almost identical, but there is something improved about it that I can't put my finger on. But I really loved that moment. And all of this is in service of building up Bilbo's character so that when he escapes Gollum and he has this little tool of invisibility and he reunites with the dwarves after the dwarves have escaped the goblins, where, again, Gandalf saved them. While invisible, Frodo hears the free roaming thoughts of the dwarves where they're just saying, where's Bilbo? And Doran's like, well, he's a coward. He said from the beginning he didn't want to be part of our adventure. He's a coward. He probably ran back home. And that's when, again, we have a moment of storytelling through performance. And that's what's great about this actor who plays Bilbo. He's really fantastic at telling the story through his reflective, thoughtful expressions, where he needs no dialogue to see he's hurt by Doran calling him a coward, but then he accepts that this is something that he had put out there and this is how his behavior has been, and then he decides to pull off his ring and say, no, I'm here with you guys and I'm sticking with you guys to the end. And this being the final moments of the movie, our orc villain comes in, Azog or whatever, who cares what his name is. Orky bad guy shows up. huge action sequence. And this is another sequence that's in the animated movie as well, where they run up and hide in the trees. But, this dramatic moment happens where Doran comes down and he's willing to fight for all of his dwarves and Frodo and Bilbo and he's willing to fight for everyone. And the villain knocks him down, and Bilbo steps forward and tries to fight our orc bad guy, and it's a moment of him really stepping up to be a hero. He doesn't really succeed in this moment. He gets knocked to the side, but everyone witnesses this, and it's really Bilbo's first act of genuine courage. And that's what I think is powerful about Unexpected Journey. Bilbo's really the main character of Unexpected Journey and Desolation of Smaug. And really, the first movie as a character journey is about that first act of courage. There's no military training for Bilbo. He just kind of has to learn as he goes. But that's what the first movie is really about, is that getting the character from being an absolute adamant, I'm certainly a coward, please leave me alone, to by the end of Unexpected Journey, I'm willing to lay down my life for you because I believe in you and you're my friend. And much of Desolation of Smaug is I love because now, well, he's found his courage. So now he's just fighting everybody and doing everything. But I love that when we go to Desolation of Smaug and the birds have saved them and dropped them off by this horrible forest. And we have the spider sequence. I love the spider sequence. And what I love is also the establishment of the powers of the ring, where when Bilbo wears the ring, he can hear the voices of the spiders when there's talking. Ooh, this one is juicy, but it's not ripe yet. Oh, but it's so juicy, who cares? I'm gonna eat it raw. And in his listening in, again, he finds his courage, but this time so much quicker, and goes out there and just starts stabbing the spiders and attacking them while invisible. And we get this great moment where after rescuing the dwarves, he still gets pulled off to the side. And the ring falls before another spider. And it's where just the first instance of that Gollum addiction appears. And he just starts attacking the spider with a completely different ferociousness. It's not straight heroism. It is a ferocious, drug addict, addictive attack where don't you take away my thing. And this is a clue to the themes of the story, where Desolation of Smaug is really about when we get to Smaug, and this was my introduction to Benedict Cumberbatch. I don't count Into Darkness as my introduction to Benedict Cumberbatch because I think it was kind of a generic movie. But his voice, Benedict Cumberbatch's voice as Smaug, was so beautiful and powerful. I was just like, yeah, like that voice is amazing. And the dialogue was amazing. And again, the gift of gab, when they finally reached, and I know I'm skipping over a lot of stuff because I just don't really care. I mean, we do get Tauriel, Evangeline Lilly from Lost. Man, I was so excited because she's an action hero in Lost, but she really gets to kick some ass as Tauriel in these Hobbit movies. And I don't care about her love interest with the dwarf, whatever. Okay, who cares? But when we get to the Smaug sequence and where Bilbo is talking to Smaug, I really love the dialogue setup of I'm almost tempted, and Bilbo finds the Arkenstone, which is the reason he was hired as a burglar, because the Arkenstone, a very specific glowing stone, is what essentially is the heirloom of whoever is supposed to be the king of them under the mountain. And in finding the Arkenstone, the dragon tells him, I'm almost tempted to let you take it. And to watch as Thorin Oakenshield falls prey to the madness and the thirst and the selfish greed that comes with the treasure. And this setup is so foreboding and powerful. Desolation of Smog is my favorite of the three, because Smog himself is such a great character and it's such a great conflict. But it's also really clearly stating to us the theme of what is the theme of the Hobbit story. Is that sometimes people fight for honor and sometimes people fight for greed, and and really you see that each character is fighting for a little bit of both. But specifically the dwarves, when you see everything they go through, where they get imprisoned by the elves, and Bilbo saves them. He comes to the rescue. What I love about Desolation of Smog is that Bilbo's just a hero in that one. He's just straight up hero, saves them from the elves, gets them out of being prisoners of war, and saves them from the spiders. Bilbo's the action hero of Desolation of Smog. But it all comes down to this interaction with Smog, where he's realizing that all this stuff he's been doing potentially is leading to even worse calamity, or to an even worse fate for his friend. But because by the end of Desolation of Smog, before he's actually interacted with the dragon, Bilbo has earned the respect of the dwarves and the respect of Thorin Oakenshield. Haven't we called him Doran? I don't know. But he's earned the respect of all of them up to this point. And now he's learning that by giving them what they want, he may be turning his friend into a tyrant, into a very greedy, selfish tyrant. And it's a very sad thing to be looking at. And what I love about when we get into the third movie, Battle of the Five Armies, that is exactly what happens. Is that Thorin, in all of his wealth, is so absorbed by it, and he becomes like the dragon. What they went through, all the dwarves have for centuries now been living in the dirt, or been living spread apart away from their homeland, and have had to make do with whatever they can. And even their entire adventure to get to the mountain, they become prisoners of war. They become attacked by multiple different villains several different times, and escape by the hairs of their chinny chin chins. And the one thing that they feared truly was the dragon. And even in Lake Town, what the movie does, the cartoon doesn't do. Even when they get to Lake Town, they have to sneak around and be hidden by fish. And even when they escape being prisoners of war, they're chucked into barrels and sent down this horrific river adventure. And all this stuff and suffering that they had to go through. And throughout all of that, Thorin had made promises to the Lake Town once they got revealed as who they are. He made promises to spread the wealth and to be a good king. But once the dragon was defeated and Thorin had all the gold to himself, the greed kicked in and they sealed off the mountain. And you could see both of the logical or understandable strain of the horrors of what they had to live through to get what they had, but also the sickening greed that was overcoming him. And there's this beautiful moment where Thorin thinks Bilbo has the Arkenstone, which he does have, and Bilbo instead shows a little nut that he found that he wants to grow in his garden. And the warmth and comfort of Bilbo, even though I've come to respect you as a warrior, you are still that man who has a home, and that's a beautiful thing that you have a home. And when Bilbo suggests, well, why don't you have your home now, why don't you just give the gold like you said you would to these people, and just make peace with all these people? And Thorin goes right into the greed and is like, I will not part with a single, and he goes into slow motion as he's saying it, I will not part with a single golden coin. And these are the exact words that Smaug used. And to see the rise of Bilbo come with the fall of Thorin, he's falling as a character. You know, he started out with honor, and in an unexpected journey would face off the entire orc army to save his friends. And by the end of Battle of the Five Armies, he's willing to let all of his dwarven army friends, you know, because he seals off the mountain, and then the five armies come, including a dwarvish army with his cousin that he knows and talked about in the previous two movies. And he's willing to let them all die for him to keep the gold and to keep the wealth. And again, he has motivation. He says to them, I was begging to live so that I could get my homeland back. That was the deal I was making. I was begging to live. And the great actor, Luke Perry, the only one I know, who plays Bard the Guardsman, is like, but you still made a promise. Are you not going to be a king who's true to his word? And all these things attack his greed, and he just deflects. And even Bilbo, at a certain point, gives the Arkenstone to the elves to sort of prevent this war. And even that turns Thorin against Bilbo, who has saved his life so many times by this point. I love that the Battle of the Five Armies, while we do have a literal battle of five armies, it's also thematically the battle of these five different points of honor your word, be good, be a good king, and do not be greedy, be a good friend. It's a battle of the five concepts of what a man and a king should be. Should you be greedy? Should you keep your word? Should you be loyal to your friends? Should you allow people to die for your selfish needs and desires? These are the things a king and a person must consider when they're out there in the world. And I really love the character journey that it takes. And again, I've talked before about what is a movie length problem for a character to deal with. And these are literally trilogy length issues that it takes the first movie for Bilbo to find his courage. And I love that scene in the second movie at the beginning. Gandalf, I have to tell you, I found something in the caves. And Gandalf, already suspicious and feels like he knows, what did you find? And he says, I found my courage. And by the end of, what's beautiful is that Thorin, at the end of the trilogy, at the end of the Battle of the Five Armies, finds his humanity again, and the 13 dwarves join the Battle of the Five Armies, and Thorin takes on his orc enemy, whatever, who cares, but he has his orc arch enemy, and he takes him on, and that final moment when, the only way to kill the orc bad guy is for he himself to be stabbed in the chest, And this is a moment stolen or homaged in Batman v Superman, quite blatantly, considering what Justice League, the Snyder Cut, ended up being. But that moment was so powerful because it was him truly going back to that moment in the burning trees where he was willing to sacrifice himself to save everybody else. And to see him find that because of Bilbo, it is Bilbo's courage and heart that reignites his own courage and his own true heart. That was truly what was needed for this man to find himself again. And this is all about what it is to have good character. I think that's the most important thing for you filmmakers out there and for you audience members when you watch movies. Really good stories are about good character. It's about how we should be as people toward ourselves and toward other people. And you see that those who have greed in their hearts always perish first. No matter how long they last, they inevitably just perish because all they had was their greed. but it's those who have the true heart within themselves and are willing to sacrifice and be good to others to create their community. Those people are the ones who last and are remembered most and most fondly. And they have true hearts and good character. And that's character, like for Bilbo, sometimes can only be found by going on some kind of journey and finding that character through trials and tribulations. Or for like Thorin, who's already been through all that, sometimes you can go through those trials and tribulations and they make you sick and they make you selfish and greedy and say that, no, I did all this for me. It's for me, God damn it. And sometimes you need the innocence of a younger person who's only just first experiencing these things to remind you, oh yeah, I wasn't just doing this for me. I was doing this for my 13 brothers and for my new brother who has joined my company. You know, it's all about having good character and not falling prey to greed and selfishness. Because as you see with all the problems in the world we have on whatever scope they are, whether it's the war in Europe or if it's the gang war down the street, that there's always something missing from people. And always the cure is kindness and good character and guidance. You know, Gandalf represents guidance. He brought Bilbo in because he knew that pure of heart nature of this guy would be a good element for these dwarves who have been hardened and saddened by all their tragedy and loss. That each one of them needed each other in order to bring the best good character that each person had at the very end. And that's a wisdom that few have, and only the luckiest of us are able to get in our lives. Having good character is an important value in life, not just the movie, but in life. And that is why these things are emotionally effective to us, because we see them in our own lives when our parents are selfish or when our family members or friends are selfish and they go the wrong way. And you know where that way leads, but they just don't care. And then they have to learn again. And sometimes it's because you stepped in, or sometimes a good person stepped in at the right moment and saved them. But each of these stories, what they're really about is about real life. The Hobbit was about World War I, and Lord of the Rings was about World War II. And in each of those stories, greed and selfishness is the enemy, and good character and good heart is what gets you to the end, and what gives you something valuable to have when you meet your end. That is the values that these stories try and teach us, to be good people and to have good hearts and to be good toward one another. And I think really those themes are why the characters act the way they act. They're why certain story elements occur when they occur. And I say again and again, you know, the idea is what generates the execution. And if you don't know what the idea is, then you're going to be one of these bobbleheads saying, it's not the idea, it's the execution. You know what I mean? But if you don't know what the idea is, then you don't actually know what's being executed. So educate yourself. Get bored the right way. Educate yourself and figure out what the hell the idea is. Because if you know what the idea is, you'll understand the execution. And I am one of those fools. So it's not about the idea, it's I was totally one of those idiots. And it was Comic Book Girl 19 who turned me around. I used to think, when I first saw The Dark Knight Rises, I thought, it's just Batman Begins again. But Comic Book Girl 19's review, where she broke down the themes and values of that film, turned me completely around. And I realized, wow, no, actually that's an incredible movie. And I should have a lot more respect for it. And I do now. And because of her in-depth look at themes and values and how they are incorporated in story structure, and how all of that structure of the theme, the value, and where it happens in the story is what gives us the ending in our final product. That stuff is what made me look at movies differently. Even though I'd already been through film school, I needed that extra little boost, that extra little perspective to awaken all the stuff that I had learned that I really hadn't learned until she had applied it to a movie that I thought I didn't like. And so here I know The Hobbit, it's not popular to say that's a great movie and that I like it. Well, I don't give a shit because I was part of the popular thinking. And you know what? It didn't help me at all. I needed to think for myself and see what are my values and how are my values reflected in the stuff that I like to watch. And that's what I look for now, thanks to people like Comic Book Girl 19. So that's what I got to say. If you didn't like what I had to say, that's totally cool. You know, don't worry about it. You can totally keep thinking The Hobbit sucks. This is why I love the Hobbit trilogy. I think Peter Jackson did a fantastic job. The whole cast and crew was perfect. They nailed it. I really think it's a fantastic trilogy. And yeah, so. And this is a nice view. I just thought, you know, we're talking about The Hobbit. It's got beautiful views and vistas. Vistas. I thought I'd have a nice background while I did this. So thank you for watching. Stay nerdy. And filmmakers, the idea generates the execution. Don't ever forget that. So aloha and yo. I'm a Baggin from Bag End. And that's that, bruh.